So last week we looked at the design elements, the basic building blocks of a design. And this week you'll explore the design principles, which help designers and photographers creating images to use those elements to communicate effectively. You can think about the relationship between the design elements and principles this way. The design principles are guidelines for when and how to use the elements in order to communicate most effectively. A lot of times I end up using the design principles to answer questions I have about where to put things on a page while I'm designing. I might, for example, have a big headline that I want people to read, and so I'll ask myself, where should I place this on the page to be most effectively seen? And what color should I make it in order to have it stand out the most? These are all questions about what to do with an aspect of my design, in this case a headline in the form of a type element. And it has conditional elements like color and size, and the principles help me to answer those questions. So what I want to do in this lecture video is to walk you through the principles, what they are and how you can tell a design has achieved them. But I want to add a little twist. I want to show you all kinds of designs, not just what you might think of like posters and book covers. As I discuss the principles, I will show you visual designs in the form of graphic designs like posters, in the form of images taken by photographers, and finally in the form of visual interfaces for mobile apps, which are designs. I'll show you how all of these different kinds of designs achieve the design principles. And I hope this will illustrate how design principles can help with any kind of visual design, from print materials to digital materials to even tools like mobile apps. So let's take a look at the design principles. Your reading breaks the design principles into two categories: principles that affect the design as a whole, and principles that affect the internal relationships between elements of a design. In this video, I'm going to cover the first category, although you should obviously be familiar with the second. These, by the way, are presented in no particular order. So let's start with unity and harmony. These are not the same thing, but close. Harmony refers to how well the elements of a design appear visually to belong together, so that the composition looks like a whole, singular design. Unity is the same idea, but across multiple designs, like a magazine. If a single page of the magazine looks cohesive, that's harmony. If all the pages of the magazine look like they are part of the magazine and designed by the same person or group, that's unity. So how do you create harmony? Well, you use similar elements in the design, such as shapes, spacing, lines, typography, texture, and so on. So in this set of posters that I found on Behance.net, we have harmony across each poster and then unity across all three. The smile of the person's mouth is V-shaped, which is just like the V shape here at the top of this yellow, pink, and blue shape at the bottom. And these shapes down here, by the way, are M's, which mimic or have harmony with the M here in the logo. You also have harmony between the typefaces because this tagline here uses the same typeface as the URL down at the bottom. So you have harmony of space as well, with the amount of what we call white space, which is empty space with no design elements in it, on the left is the same as the amount of white space on the right. In this mobile app example, again, we have harmony on each page and unity across all pages. The design element of this honeycomb shape is repeated here, here, and here, and also here. And the same orange color that you see here is used over and over again in all of these different elements. And anything that you can click on has round edges. Even the calendar down here, which normally would be a square, and these buttons here, which again normally are rectangles, are rounded. They feature rounded edges to create harmony and teach the user that if a thing is rounded, you can click on it. This round thing is clickable, this round thing is clickable, this round thing is clickable, these two are, these rounded elements up here, this, here, all of these down here, anything that has a sort of rounded look to it is a thing that you can click on. In this image, I hope that harmony will immediately be clear. The shadows are all the same color and they're all pointing in the same direction. So this also shows a great use of repetition. The next principle I want to show is variety or contrast. This is the opposite of harmony. Harmony is a great tool for making a design look cohesive, but when everything in the design looks the same, nothing stands out to the viewer. You want something to stand out, usually whatever part of your design communicates the most information. To get the most important part of your design, the most important information to stand out, you give it variety by using elements that are opposite or much different from the ones you use to make the design look harmonious. So again, you're using the design elements, but now you're going for opposite instead of the same. In this magazine cover, the middle section stands out because it's one of the only things on the entire page that isn't a colorful vegetable. You have contrast between the bright colors of these vegetables here and the black and white center here. The words are the most important element on this page because they explain why you would want to buy and read this magazine. So they're centered, larger, and completely different in color than the veggies on the outside. We also see contrast between the Foodies headline here and the name of the magazine here. These two typefaces come from different races, and so they're much different from each other, which helps the one in the center to stand out more. In this mobile app example, the designer has used variety to show the difference between what the buttons do. The buttons that take you places, like to your profile here or to the comments section here, are gray. The button that actually does something, in this case takes a picture, here is blue. The blue is a contrast to the gray and helps the users of this app to understand that although all 5 of these things on the bottom are buttons, the blue one is different because it doesn't take you to content, it actually helps you make content. It's a tool, while the others are links. The contrast in this photograph should be quite evident. The color of the chimp, the fur texture, and the fact that the chimp's face is more in focus are all different or contrasting from the background, which is a blurry, green, sort of fluffy thing. This helps the chimp gain your attention as you view the image. The hierarchy or dominance principle governs effective use of elements to draw attention to things in a certain order in your design. Basically, your brain is programmed to think that larger things and things that stand out because of variety are more important. So let me repeat that because that's so critical to design. Your brain is programmed to think that things in a design that are larger and that stand out more are more important. So to communicate effectively, you need to make the most important information the largest and the most noticeable. Then you have to prioritize the other pieces of information. So in this poster, the largest thing, the most interesting thing that stands out against this gray background is the dancer intertwined with the title. So the dancer and the title, Swan Lake, become the primary focus because they're the largest and most contrasting against the background. If you learn nothing else from this poster, you have learned that Swan Lake is dance and that it is somehow a thing you need to know. The secondary information is the second largest, in this case, information about where and when you can see Swan Lake. And the third piece of information, in this case, the theater that's hosting it, is the third largest, and so on. As the information gets less important, it gets smaller and less demanding of your attention. That's hierarchy. In this mobile app, the hierarchy is based on what people are using it for. This is Instagram, which you open to see pictures. So the pictures are the most important pieces of information, the reason people keep opening this app. And here they are presented the largest. The rest of the information are much smaller. The rest of the information is prioritized using hierarchy. We go from most important to second, third, and fourth most important by using size and contrast. In this image, again, we have hierarchy. What is the most important thing for you to see here? This is an image showing the human toll of the Haiti earthquake. So right here, the thing we see first is a person who has been affected by the earthquake. The victim is the most important thing to see here because this is a photo communicating about the victims of the earthquake, followed by the rescuer here and all the rubble that you see on the outside. Now, that is not to say that the subject of the image or design necessarily always has to be the biggest or the most contrasting thing, or the most dominant, as we call it. This image is titled Nicolette at the Orphanage. What draws your attention first? It's probably not Nicolette because she's not the largest or most contrasting thing here, but that's kind of the message, right? The communication behind this image is that Nicolette is all alone and she's not the focus of anyone's life, to the point that no one at this orphanage seems to much notice or care that she's sitting in the corner doing nothing by herself. The fact that she's not dominant and that the emptiness of the room and the discarded toys are more dominant than her, are larger, is the message. The focus here is on this emptiness, and so the emptiness is the biggest thing that you see. Okay, we're about halfway through our look at the design principles. So now we look at focus, where the eye is first drawn in a composition. Hierarchy supports focus. One thing to remember about focus is that you typically don't want the focus to be right in the center of the page because that's boring. The rule of thirds helps designers to place the focus in an interesting manner. And the rule of thirds states that if we divide a composition up into 3 columns and 3 rows, we get a grid system in which we want to place the focus at some intersection of the grid. Placing the rule of thirds grid over this design, for example, we can see that the thing that draws our focus, that draws our attention, the dancer's head, arm, and the word swan, is along this line here and near these 2 intersections. In this image of a female luchador, the focus is on the wrestler, and her body runs right along the rule of third lines, with her center of mass right at one of the intersections. Take a close look at 2 more examples. Proportion is also related to hierarchy in that proportion helps you achieve hierarchy. Proportion is all about working with size relationships between the elements to create hierarchy and focus. Your focus should be on the largest thing on the page. And again, the focus doesn't have to be the subject, like in the picture of Nicolette at the orphanage, where the focus is the emptiness of the room and the sadness of the space. In this poster, I've identified all of the things that take up space: the title and dancer, the date information, and the theater company name. If I stack up the amount of space each of these things takes, so if I fill in these boxes and then put them on top of each other, you'll see that the dancer and headline, the primary focus, takes up almost 4 times as much space as anything else. This mobile app called Ingress is a game put out by Google in which you run around outside to score points. So what you're seeing in the screen is a real Google map with the game laid out over top it. The map takes up almost the entire screen because it's the focus. It's what the player is using to play the game 99% of the time. The other 1% of the time, the user needs to use these buttons at the bottom and top, and this information is smaller and on the outside because it's used less. So take a look at the proportion between these elements. The thing the user uses the most is the largest. Take a look at proportion in these images as well. This one is similar to Nicolette, where the proportion, the thing that's the largest, is actually the empty space and the environment, emphasizing the smallness of the person imprisoned in this space. Balance is the last design principle that I want to look at. It's the one almost every student gets wrong because you are taught that symmetry is balance. If you can fold a design in half and everything on the left lines up with everything on the right, that's balance. And yes, that is balance, but it's not the only kind of balance. You don't have to have symmetry to have balance. you can have asymmetry and balance. So balance is really about distributing visual weight. Anything in your design that uses the design elements and draws attention has weight. And balance is about distributing that weight across a composition equally. In this design, for example, there is no perfect symmetry. If you fold the design down the middle, everything on the left doesn't line up with everything on the right. But if I box in everything in the design that has visual weight, you can see it doesn't match on the left and right. But there's just as much stuff on the left as there is on the right. If I fill in those boxes, you can see that. If I then reorganize those boxes, so I've drawn over the visual weight, I filled in those boxes, and if I reorganize those boxes and stack them a bit like Tetris, you can see that there's about as much stuff on the left as there is on the right. That's balance. Same for this mobile design and these images. So that's everything I wanted to show you about the design principles this week. The other thing you're going to do this week is watch 2 very short videos of a designer using these principles. So you can get a sense for how a designer thinks about them as he or she works on a composition.